Show with Jacquie Wayans. Inspiration through word and song for you.
Welcome to Don't Give Up and Win. I'm your host, Jacquie Wayans, and we are here another week with another story that is sure to touch your heart, that is sure to expand your understanding of what God can do in you and what He can do in a life. And I want you to continue to constantly press towards that mark, because it doesn't matter what the challenge may have been. The street life, is that attracting you? Is that a pull to you? You know, the things, the clubs, the nightlife, all of that jazz. Well, our guest knows all about that. He lived it to the fullest, but he's here today to tell us about that journey and where he is today. Michael Blackwood, thank you for joining us and being on Don't Give Up.
Thank you for having me, Jacquie.
It's a pleasure.
Yeah.
It's a pleasure. I was invited to an event for youth, and you were one of the people presenting your spoken word piece that you wrote yourself, and I was riveted through the whole thing, but I realized this is a life story that's being shared so clearly here, and I said I had to have you on the show to really break that down for us and talk about where you've been and who you are today.
Okay.
So let's talk about where you've been. You know, we all start out with hopes and dreams as young people. So, you know, you're a city kid, a city dweller. Mm-hmm. What was it like growing up? What was your family dynamic like growing up?
Well, I'm from a West Indian background. I was born in Manhattan, but my parents are from Jamaica. Okay. And I'm the only child. So growing up, you know, I had a pretty good life, and, you know, everything was pretty much provided for me, the schooling, you know, everything that I needed. And I had aspirations of becoming a commercial artist and going to college straight from high school. But, you know, growing up in the neighborhood and in the boroughs, you know, it can be challenging when you're unsupervised. Mm-hmm. And, you know, I had a lot of curiosity as my mother and father had separated when I was 12 years old, and, you know, mom had to work double shifts. And so I had a lot of free time in the after school, because mom would not come home until like 11 p.m. Wow. So for the years of 12 all the way through high school, I had unlimited time until 11 o'clock to, like, pretty much, you know. To
whatever. I'm going to pause you for a second, because we actually live in the same community. And one of the things that I noticed when I moved there is that, you know, parents are working so hard. They've got their homes, they've got the cars, but they're working these long hours, they're working double shifts, and the kids are just like taken to the street, and that's where they're filling their time, because they're good parents who are trying to keep a roof over their head are not there to supervise them. And it's difficult. You know, I was a single mom for, you know, 16 years, and I know what it's like to have to weigh the balance between the paycheck from the job and being there for your kids. So it's a tight walk, and many of our, especially Caribbean parents, tend to work themselves so hard. So here you are, you're growing up like that, but what were your dreams at the time? Like, if you said you thought about going into the commercial field, but did you actually have a venue? Did you see any modeling in front of you, any other men in your world to say, okay?
I had one of my mother's cousin. He was a very gifted artist, and he actually had his master's, but he was a phlebotomist full time. And so he was like my mentor, and so he became someone that would come and get me after school sometimes, so that I could be around him, because my mother knew, like, you know, left unattended, like, you know, that's not good. So he kind of role modeled me and took me to art shows, and, you know, I spent a lot of time with him, so that was more of an encouragement for me. And as I went to a private high school for my last 2 years, the art teacher lived in his building, and so at that school, like, when I would go to art, you know, I would have free room to draw what I needed to draw, and, you know, I was pretty much mentored into, like, you know, that direction of school.
Okay, and where did faith play a role in your life at that point? Were you raised in the church knowing about God? Was He real to you at that point?
Yes, I was always raised through my mother, like, you know, to pray to God and, you know, put God first over her. So, you know, when my mother is telling me over her, only put God first. I was like, wow. She said that like with meaning and serious. So, you know, I would always keep that in the back of my mind at all times.
But it was in the back of your mind.
Yeah, it was in the
Yeah.
back of my mind. I always, okay, yeah, pray, okay, yeah.
Okay. So clearly now we've got the mentors and the strong parent, but then we do have the street life that
Yes.
was out there calling your
Yes.
name.
Yes.
Just give me like a little tiny teaser about what that was drawing you out.
Okay, I had friends that lived on the block, down the block from me, and you know, they weren't like the most academic oriented students. So, you know, I became friends with them, and because I was the only child, like, you know, that was like my common ground. Like, okay, they live down the block, they're pretty popular, and at the time, roller skating was a big thing.
Okay.
So we had that in common, and through that little link, you know, I was introduced to like, you know, the street life, the smoking of reefer, and I went to my first club when I was 16. I had a summer job as a messenger, so I had exposure going into like Roseland at 16 on a Friday, you know.
I am an only child too, and I can tell you there's been moments where I know it was just God, because I could have gone in a swerve direction also. So when we come back, we're going to hear more from Michael in terms of the turn that his life took.
Hi, I'm Anthony Anderson, and on TV I play a dad who has it all. But in real life, I grew up in a very different neighborhood. My parents worked hard for everything we had, but one key thing I learned from them was to take care of the future. They understood that tomorrow isn't promised to anyone. That's why they each had life insurance. And when I turned 18, I got a policy too. This is what I don't understand. If we could do it on our limited income, why are there over 100 million Americans without life insurance? Wouldn't you want to make sure your family is okay if something happened to you? I mean, you insure your high-def big screen, but not the person watching. What's up with that? Where's your family's safety net? If you can buy a latte now and then, you can pay for a life insurance policy. It's that affordable. As a husband and a father, I understand why my parents made it a priority. You should too. Join me in taking care of our family's futures. Learn more at lifehappens.org.
A public service message from the nonprofit Life Happens.
Don't you give up now. Don't you give up now.
And we're back with my guest, Michael Blackwood, and he was sharing with us what it was like to be a young man growing up by a loving and adoring and hardworking mom, but she just wasn't there. And in her absence, you found things that weren't necessarily good things to occupy your time. And it's funny how it starts, because it's something as innocent as saying, hey, I'm an only child, I want friends, I want companionship. Roller skating, that's fun, there's nothing wrong with that, but one thing leads to another, and it starts with, you know, smoking a little marijuana, and then where does it go?
Yeah, well, I graduated high school in 1985, and at that time, that was the start of the crack era, as all of America knows at that time.
Wow.
So that night, it was like the introduction for me. Hey, let's light up, graduated. That was the in thing. It was glorified at that time. And by the next year, like, you know, my life had took a turn just like that. Like, started to sell the drugs, started to use it, started to just like, you know, just mess up this package, take work from this person. You know, it just became like a cycle. You know, my life was in danger. One of my escape routes was like I was able to get into the Army, you know.
I don't want to get to the escape route yet.
Yeah.
I want to
Yeah.
actually, because what you just said there, it touches my heart, because I tend to forget how damaging the crack era was, but we are still reeling from the results of that in terms of, you know, the grandchildren of that, and then people who didn't have the parenting skills and all that type of stuff. You get involved with that. Do the people in your life, the adults around you, did they see what was going on? Were they able to tell what was going on with you?
It took a while for it to really surface, and, you know, because, you know, I wouldn't see like my relatives that much unless it was holidays and stuff. But like the effect of my mother coming home and things were missing, and, you you know, she's noticing she's leaving dinner and dinner is not being eaten and the food is not being consumed like how it normally would when she would come home, and stuff is like being thrown away because it's not being eaten.
Right.
And you know, over the years, like it just deteriorated me as an individual. Like, you know, I couldn't hold a job. Forget about relationships. I couldn't hold a dollar. Like, you know, it just had me like out on the streets. And as a young adult, like all of my 20s was
All of your 20s.
all of my 20s.
Wow.
All of my 20s, from like 1985 straight to 2005. So we're talking like that drug consumed and occupied my life for like 20 years, full time, like a career, like it had me in Rikers Island. You know, everything was centered around getting and using the drug.
So at what point did you hit the wall? What was the crisis for you that said, I can't continue on like this?
I would say the rock bottom came when my mother retired, like in 2001. You know, just me not working and, you know, just being home with her. And, you know, then Alzheimer's started to set in. And because she didn't go for frequent checkups, by the time she went, it was already set in place and just started to progress as she stayed home. So with that disease setting in, my addiction in full blown, you know, it came a point to one day I looked in the mirror and I didn't like what I saw. You know, my aunts would come and they would just ring the bell, and when I go down, it would be just like 3 bags of groceries, and they would be pulling off, and I'd be like, they'd be like pulling off, and you know, it was just, and I came to a realization, like, you know, I am going to end up dying. I am abusing my mother financially. And you know, one day my aunt came and she just cried out to like Jesus to get the demon and the devil out of that house and for him to leave me alone. And she bawled so hard, like I felt something just go through me. And I looked in the mirror after she left, and I just didn't like what I saw. And I said, I have to go and get help because I don't want to live like this anymore.
Right, and it has to come from you, right? It's not something that people can really force you or navigate you into. It's the point where you see it for yourself and you say...
Things were getting like unmanageable. I was walking my mother to the bank like 2-3 times a week, and you know, it came to the point where my aunts were trying to get the bank managers like, look, stop him, arrest him. They're like, we can't, he's not forcing her, she's walking in willingly.
Right.
And, you know, they were just upset with me, you know.
So what caused you to say yes to the Lord? Was it that prayer that your aunt gave, or what brought that realness?
That was the intro, and then I remember Palm Sunday happened to come, and I remember prior to that I was telling one of my aunt-in-laws, you know, how when the pastor does the altar call, how I feel something pulling me to go up, and then when I'm ready to make that move, I feel something saying, don't go, like a heavy letters on my foot. So it seemed like she relayed that message to my cousin. And on that Palm Sunday, when they did the altar call, I had that feeling again, like that pulling. And the person next to me tapped me. When I looked, they pointed to the aisle, and when I looked, it was my cousin, and she was just dressed in white, and she was like, come. And that force of her hand going like this, it just was just like a magnetic pull. And for the first time in my whole entire life, I went up to the altar, and the bawling that came out of me at the altar, it was like an exorcist, like a bawling, and I felt one person here, another person here. When I slightly glanced, it was each of my aunt, and they surrounded me, and I was just bawling because all the hurt, all the shame, and all the guilt was just pouring out, and I bawled until I was just like, I just felt that relief. And when I stood up and walked back I said, okay, now I need to go into treatment and get my life together.
All right, you did it the right way. You did it the right way. You understood that it wasn't going to be through your power or your strength. He gave his heart and his life to the Lord, and allowed the Lord to then move him into getting the treatment and the help that he needs. When we come back, I'd love for you you did a wonderful spoken word piece. I'd love them to hear the fullness of your story and your journey through that. Will
Okay.
you do that for us?
Sure.
Absolutely. When we return.
Don't you give up now. Don't you give up now.
This is my life testimony called Against All Odds. And it goes a little something like this. When you look at all the niceness as we sit up in a crisis, take a look at your watch, man. Is this really what life is? But as I get poetic, my style is energetic. And if you're looking at the dice, man, you might as well just bet it. See, I came a long way at the drop of a dime, and when things are looking ugly on my face, I hide a smile. See, I've been inducted and instructed to send the word of God to the hearts of those that are still living corrupted. See, this message that I send goes straight to the brokenhearted. It might seem like I'm upset, but look what the devil done started. To be a lame is a shame and a big disrespect. Stay away from that gunman who plays with a tech. See, on the island wasn't smiling, and I ain't gonna front. I couldn't wait to do my bid and wrap my lips on a blunt. But to go back and use, man, I don't dare. Pick up, stick up, because, man, I swear, don't let me lose my religion in here. You see, against all odds, man, they said I'd never make it. People smiled up in my face, but all along I knew they faked it. See, God said, speak, Mike, speak, so I'ma speak. And if your soul is looking lost, then it's your soul that I'ma seek. They say church is a community of strength, help, and hope. Helped an addict like me, man, learn how to cope. But in the midst of my myths, I never cease to riff. I'll be the first to tell the dread, yo, man, easy upon a spliff. See, I've been to hell and back, and I spit the devil in his face. But now he's trying to tell me that this world's a better place. Man, listen, who he thinks he's fooling? Summertime is coming, so he needs to just be cooling. But as my burdens turned to blessings, I started learning from my lessons. And when I found out I was lost, see, it was something I wasn't addressing. See, the essence in my presence is the magic in my gift. I like to do things slow, but yo, my money I count swift. And since you live your life in chances, go ahead and roll a dice. But when you lose out on that bet, boy, best believe you pay the price. So do yourself a favor so you won't forget. Remember when it rains how we all get wet. And do yourself a favor, try to stay dry, because I'm going to talk to you, my peoples, eye to eye. But as I sound off, keep this in mind. Life's about business, so please don't waste your time. I'm going to go 1 to the 2 to the 3 to the 4. See, I ain't got to ask what I came here for. 4 to the 5, and I can't forget the 6. I start saving all my money, stop tricking on the tricks. 7 to the 8 and the 9 and the 10. Y'all need to sit up and listen to this message that I send. Because when you look at all the sadness and better yet the madness, you're still hoping one day your life is going to see happiness. Man, how much darker must it get? It's almost like a threat. See, this ain't 21 Jump Street and you ain't Johnny Depp. But as I run this race in life, yeah, I'm looking for the finish line. I keep my focus on my future and I leave my dirt behind. Yeah, I done fell in the past, but I got back up. And in this game of life, man, I'm about to step up to the plate and try to hit a grand slam and show my skills like they do in Def Jam. Because whatever it was that made me go wrong, I now ask for the strength to continue to keep strong. And whatever it was that made me weak, I now ask for the strength so that I may speak the dirt that is clean and the lies that are true. I gotta love myself first before I even say I love you. You see, time never left, all that's left is my time. But the moment I excel is the moment you decline, slipping in the grave and straight into the earth. You be calling for your mama, yeah, the one that gave you birth. Or better yet, your pops, you know, the one that calls you son, because you be finishing up your homework and still left the job undone. See, this feeling that I'm feeling is the ultimate high. And to mess this all up, man, I ain't gonna lie. To mess this all up would be unsafe for my health. Or just to keep it plain, I'll be playing myself. I had to go back to church and make new friends, but before I left them streets, man, I made amends. So every day I wake up, I say, thank you, Lord. I realize my arms was too short to box with God. Every day I wake up, I say, thank you, Lord, because Mike, your arm is too short to box with God. I done lived enough lives to lend to a cat. You say they only get 9, but I've done past that. So from the cradle to the grave, I want to be a disciple. I want to teach to my peoples what I read in my Bible. You see, so many times I've been told about drugs, and so many times my friend were those thugs. So the years, the tears, and I can't forget the lies. But now that I'm clean, man, I want to apologize. Today I see tomorrow for what yesterday was not. People trying to make $1 million from that raid on my block. But I count on my blessings, yo, each and every day. And before I rest my head, I'll make sure that I pray. See, I used to live my life rough, but nowadays I take it gently. I want to say thank you to God for this blessing that they sent me. But that is all in this message that I send. Please let your lives begin, because my poem must now end. You see, I'm an OD who never OD'd, and if you got that good coke, man, I don't need. So never listen to that bum who claims he has a Range Rover. Yo, my class is dismissed, and yo, the session is over. Don't give up.
For the Don't Give Up and Win takeaway moment. You know, there are many addictions in life. There's not just drugs, right? There's the addiction of our passions, of things that get in our way, of stumbling blocks. And I don't want to minimize addictions by any means. What I love about our guest today's story is the fact that he let God do the work. And over again, I've heard so many people say, I just want to clean myself up first. I just want to fix this area of my life first. And when I get those things together, then I'll come to the Lord. But that defeats the purpose of why he gave his life for you. If you could do it yourself, he wouldn't have had to take such a drastic measure in order to bring you to him. He wants you to come first, just as you are. And then from there, he will give you the strength to be able to endure what you need to so that you can get to the other side, so that you can win. That's what this is all about. So take that step today. Romans 10:9 and 10 says that if you confess with your mouth that Jesus is Lord and believe in your heart that God raised him from the dead, you will be saved. That's all it takes. That's the first step. I love when God can take the pain and the ugliness of our life and of our past and turn it into something rich and beautiful for other people to be able to listen
Amen.
and hear. When you did that and you did your thing, right? When you did that, I could hear your journey, but I could hear how real it is. It's not something you're going to ever forget. That path that you took to be who you are today, sitting here next to me. But I want our audience to know what God has done for you. So let's back up a little bit, and you went into rehab.
Yes.
How did your life begin to turn around?
Well, as I went into rehab, I was able to understand the internal damage that I did, not only to my mother, but to myself. And, the amends that I needed to make with myself first in order to move on and not have resentments continue to pop up in reservations and relapses. And that took about 2 years for me to complete because I wasn't court mandated. I went in self-referred, so I was really focused on getting what I needed to get. And upon completion of the rehab, I was offered an opportunity to work with the same organization that I was in as a client.
Okay.
And I really understood the value of $1, and they really made me earn that position. So when I finally started to work, like 3 months later, I enrolled into Monroe College, and that was in April of '07. In June of 2010, I graduated with my bachelor's. And it was then that I realized, God had brought me through these last 2 years of my process, and I completed my bachelor's, something my mother always wanted me to do, but I had to do it in God's time and when I was ready for it. And I said, you know what? I need to get baptized and just live my life wholeheartedly for the Lord, because it could have been different. My life didn't have to be restored.
Right.
So I took classes, and that New Year's Eve watch night on 210, I was baptized. And ever since then, my life has just grown. I got introduced to a beautiful lady in my church. She's a member of the church. We actually grew up in church, but I'm a little older than her by a couple of years. And to make a long story short, I got engaged to her on December of 2013.
Awesome.
And we got married 7 months later, July
Wonderful.
of 2014.
So you're now a husband and a
father.
father. You're clean.
I'm an uncle.
You're an uncle, and you're living the
Yes.
life. And you know
Yes.
what? People will tell us that it can't be done. People will tell us that, but with the power of God, all things are possible.
All
There's nothing
things,
impossible with Him. Thank you so much for being my
Yes.
guest and for sharing this. And I believe that someone's going to watch this and have the
Yes.
strength to believe that what God did for you, He can do for them too.
Yes, all things are possible through God.
Amen.
But just trust and believe, and don't ever give up.
Never give up.
Never.
Don't give up and win.
And win.
Okay, until next time, go ahead and be your own best hero, because the
Yes.
greatest hero of all said you were worth it when He gave His life for you on
That's
the cross.
big on the cross.
It's